everybody. Welcome to a session of Dr. Cammy Goes Keto. I am here with Mike Collins, the sugar-free man. I am starting my own YouTube channel. The wrinkles need to get ironed out. I'm supporting Karen in whatever endeavors she does. She's a wonderful woman, and she's really going carnivore. And for me right now, that's not working. So I'm here today with Mike. Thank you so much for being here for me. And we're going to talk a little bit about where I'm going and where I'm steering to and what kind of work I still need to do. And so I think that in retrospect, when I was thinking about my diet and just about 2 years ago, August 2 years ago was when I started the ketogenic diet and this journey on our YouTube channel. We were going keto. And then I figured out fairly quickly within a couple of months that the sugar substitutes were not working for me and that I was just eating compulsively all of these sugar substitutes. So I had to try to pull those out too. And that's how I found Mike and his wonderful 30-day sugar detox challenge, which I highly recommend for anyone who's trying to pull off a sugar. And you might even want to try to look at some coaching with him, because I think one-on-one coaching as you go through that would be really, really helpful. And so I still struggle with being off and on of the sugar and getting that with my binges that occur. And generally when I'm not binging, I can do fairly well on eating without the sugar, although I'm eating some factor meals now. We'll talk about that. And those probably do have some sugar things in there, like guar gum and things that are masked as sugar, and also anti-cake things. So in any case, so I think what I tried to do was just push through the diets without looking at the emotional aspects of why I binge eat and getting to my root cause, which goes back to 2 and 3 years old. When I first started, ingesting sugar as a way to soothe and comfort myself, I remember doing that, not at 2 and 3, but I definitely remember doing it by 8 and 7 years old and having it work for me at that time, which of course right now it doesn't work for me. And it's just really dangerous for me as I age with this weight on me. So this is what I think Mike and I are going to try to work on, going through the emotional aspect. And maybe on one of these sessions, we can get me into my bedroom with my dinosaur hitting my bed and seeing what comes up. I think it would be kind of hard to do that on a video, but you never know. I can be pretty vulnerable
We
and
can do it.
pretty open. So I don't know. I just wanted to know, just what you think about this and where I'm going and how we're going to get to my root
Yeah,
cause
no,
emotional
thanks.
issues.
And you're doing great, by the way. You have been always. It's, the fact that you're having what I'm going to describe kind of coaching online live on YouTube is a miracle in and of itself. It's a courage, a braveness that's just unheard of. So anyway, what you're describing in the work is super important, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But, the food, and I made this mistake for years. It's taken us years to develop the challenge that we have, that 30-day challenge that you mentioned, and then the coaching on top of it, which is, when people need a little help by themselves, is that clients and you fell into it and Karen fell into it a little bit. It's like, we'll drag you forever talking about food, right? Because it's been the major obsession of your life, of the life of someone that ends up at my doorstep, It becomes this, it always has been. You're always thinking about it, worrying about it, planning it. It just becomes this overwhelming obsession in your life. And it's not always like, what are you going to eat? It's like, should I, or shouldn't I, should I, or shouldn't I? You're debating it and thinking about it and guilty about it and shaming yourself. I mean, it just goes on and on. And what the reality is that you really do need to detox, okay? Sugar is a neurotoxin. It's a poison. And the science is not that far along yet, so that we have the diagnostic tools to, just definitively prove this. They're still negotiating it and blah, blah, blah. But after, interviewing 400 of the world's leading experts, pretty clear, especially in the last 2 years, that it is a brain disruptor. Dr. saying, I'm not being shy anymore. Sugar shrinks your brain. The eminent Dr. Lustig, this is a brain neurotoxin. This is a neurotoxin. And so, and it's, they're calling Alzheimer's diabetes 3 and what have you. And all this leads to the work that you're describing there, or the work that we need to do. You have to detox from sugar. You have to attempt. I'm not saying anyone's perfect at this, okay? And there's a lot of nuances. That's why we created the challenge. There's a lot of nuances in what people out there think about as detox. And ours is from 57,000 plus of them, and 5 iterations of the challenge. It has become understood. This is really, at this juncture, it's pattern recognition. We've understand if I get a proper intake on you, which you and I have done, then I can pretty much tell where you are and what the work is and how long it will take to detox, and how long, how attached you are, I guess the best way to put it, to the sugar, and how long it will take. But the description of the work has absolutely, and this is the most important part of the whole time we're going to spend together, has absolutely nothing to do with food. Right? It has zero to do with food. And you don't want to get stuck either as a participant in trying to quit it, or a coach, or if you're coaching people. You don't want to get stuck in that, because of the diet industry, the $78 billion diet industry. Everybody wants a food plan and an exercise plan, right? And that together works okay, just okay, simply because every diet book ever written says reduce and quit the white stuff. So there is a level of restriction that begins. And then people exercise where they get endorphins and dopamine and serotonin and cannabinoid. They get a lot of positive mental soothing taking the place of the sugar. The problem is they don't focus on the mental soothing part. They focus on the food part, right? And thinking that they can eat their way to abstinence, eat their way to health, and eat their way to weight loss, right? There's a belief there. And that they believe that the exercise is quote unquote burning calories and helping the calories be, the quote unquote calorie deficit, where you're eating less calories than you're burning. Pretty much that's all been debunked. That when you ingest sugar and flour, it's a chemical reaction, not a burning. This is a little side thing, but a bomb calorimeter is how you find out what a calorie is, how much energy it takes to burn something. We're not burning anything. We're processing chemicals in our body, right? And it's affecting our brain. And what has happened over the decades, since you were 3 or 4 that you mentioned, is that we have used sugar to self-soothe, right? And when we stop self-soothing with this substance, we end up like the common refrain is, Mike, I'm losing my mind about day 4 or 5, because you don't really know how to navigate everyday stresses and strains. God forbid, what usually happens in a great majority of people is things that they have not gotten closure on or clarity on emotionally: deaths, divorces, finances, relationships, careers, whatever, things that they just numbed out, right? They numbed out more, now are coming to the surface. They're beginning to have memories of them. Moreover, they're beginning to have feelings about them that they never processed. The term from the emotional eating world, which they have one term right, which is stuffing feelings, is correct, right? They've stuffed the feelings by ingesting this substance and soothing themselves that way, okay? For a time, it works. Like any drug, it works until it doesn't, and you need more and more and more to keep the same feeling going, right? And so the work, and I keep putting the air quotes and using the work is the emotional, the behavioral change, the ability to eventually live with very little sugar or no sugar in your life. The work is really more akin to a codependency recovery program, an addiction program, a recovery from addiction, recovery, saying no, setting boundaries, sticking up for yourself. It's more about a social interaction with the world where you kind of are an alien. 99% of people are going to not care if you give this product to a baby. 90 plus parents are going to actually even thank you for giving their child a sugary treat. And then there's 10% that are kind of on the fence, and 1% maybe would be upset with you that you did this. So in society, this is an accepted celebration, whatever. It's just an accepted thing, and it's in the food system. So
And
the word and
happiness goes
happiness and
there.
love and all of these emotions are tangled up with it into birthdays and weddings and such, even funerals, all the way. Everything in birth and death is related to sugar, or has been evolved to be. But there's no one alive that remembers when those types of celebrations and Thanksgivings and holidays didn't include this much sugar, right? And so it's a real weird situation. It's like the evolution of the quitting smoking thing, where finally, there were a lot of people back, in the early century, 20th century, that knew that cigarettes were bad for them. But, they would see doctors on television advertising it. Doctors would come to the hospital, sit on your bed and smoke a cigarette while you were smoking a cigarette in the hospital because it helped your nerves, it calmed you or something. And this was an actual common belief, right? Until the science said that's not true. It causes lung cancer, and it'll kill you. And then in our lifetime, in yours and my lifetime, the social norms around cigarette smoking have changed, like reversed 180 degrees. Now, how fast this will happen with sugar, because now the science is caught up to this. We always knew about the weight and the diabetes and the fatty liver and all this stuff, but now we know about the brain and this behavioral change process that we're not thinking about when we're quitting. Like, we're thinking about this exercise, this burn calories and restrict, restrict, restrict. And we don't really know. It's not like we needed a beer on a Friday. Like, we know that we're beat up and bloody from the week, and we just want to numb out and have a couple of beers on a Friday. It's not that. It manifests itself. This deep limbic need turns from the limbic brain of needing a dopamine hit into a process in the frontal cortex, the control center, that says, I just like a little chocolate. I just like. And so it's so insidiously sneaky and unconscious, subconscious, that you're not getting it. And the problem here is to actually bring all this to the conscious level. Get the abstinence first, okay? 100% abstinence. It's just a test, gang. Just a test. It's not you know, a lifetime sentence so that you're going to be different from all of your fellows. It's just a test in your body because you come to the conclusion that sugar may be a problem. And then go through the emotional work that needs to happen, and change the way that you self-soothe. Just yoga, walking, running, hugs, manicure, pedicure, massage. There's a million ways to self-soothe that do not include the substance, that you don't have a practice of. You're not used to feeling upset about the boss and going for a run. It's just not in your repertoire yet. And also and no one knows whether that. One of my big questions in life, and you're living in the middle of it, okay, is that, do you have to feel one for one the emotions that were trapped? In your case, the death of your child, your divorce, your mother's narcissism, the mother's shaming. Do you have to feel one for one? Meaning, do you have to feel exactly the stuff that you stuffed as you go through this process? I don't think anyone knows, okay? I don't think they know if you have to do it all, like you have to process all of the emotions. Some part of me, personally, who's gone through this, believes that you do have to do a lot of it over time. It doesn't have to be in the first year or anything, but you do have to you have to, what we call living in process. You have to learn a different process that doesn't include ingesting sugar to soothe yourself, to excise, to get the emotion up and out, right? To experience the emotion. If you're mad at your boss, if you're upset with your children, you do it in a way that's irrational, that, maybe to them, you have the hard conversations, the social conversations, The saying no's, the sticking up for yourself, the blocking of them buying stuff for you or making stuff for you, the saying, no, I can't, I don't want to. When you feel like this, it'll upset you at them. And so all of this, I'm hoping that, I didn't mean to take so long, but I needed to explain so that for folks and you, we move back to, yes, you're doing great with the food. You're doing as abstinent as you can. We use teaching moments when you go off plan to not study what you ate or why, but why you ate it, what you were feeling when you ate it or just before. And almost every time, and the only reason we didn't do it every time is because we didn't discuss it every time, we found an emotional trigger, a mother situation, a relationship situation, a memory situation that you were dealing with that really caused the the binge, the need for sugar, the need to soothe, right? And so I just, how does that all sit with you? I know that intellectually you know this, right? I only really articulated it so the folks that are listening can, kind of get where we're at and catch them up in, 5 or 10 minutes, what we've been going through over all, a couple months period time. And so, how does that land with you? How are you feeling now about your abstinence, the emotional life, the emotional growth that you're going through?
Thank you so much for that, explanation of everything and setting us, a good, like where we are here and where we need to go. I would say that for me, awareness is really important. And, that's always the beginning, right? You have to be aware of what you're thinking and feeling and how that's trying to come out in a soothing way with sugar. And because once you're aware, you can stop it. You can say, this is what's going on. And what happens with me is that I'll have a feeling that will be bad, and then the sugar doesn't come till later. Like sometimes I'll box it all up, I'll wrap it all up, and that's why I think, like when I went 47 days on carnivore without a binge, it was almost like a white knuckling of it, kind of like building it up and building it up and building it up, and then I just couldn't take it anymore. And so what I need to do, what we need to be working on for me is figuring out how to let out the steam like a little bit at a time so that there is no buildup occurring. And the first thing that you have to do is be aware of that. And so that's something that I'm really going through my days, paying attention to, a check-in, regular check-ins with how am I feeling about things? How am I knowing what's going on? Sometimes I'm still very numb to it and I don't get it. And I'll just be, eating eating a bagel or something that was not on my plan, and I won't even be aware of what's happening. So I do need more awareness, but it's coming. It's coming more and more. The other thing that I wanted to say was I understand now about how it's not so much about the food. Like I get it. Like I'm at that point right now where I'm like, I don't really care about the food. I need to figure out something. I have to have a plan of action to eat because I need nutrition. And that's really pleasing me that the idea of nourishing my body is coming along, because I always wanted to be somebody who would just nourish my body in a healthy way. And I'm still not there yet. I still have all this, food and binging and sugar and all this stuff is still up there swirling around. But I see how it could be that I, progress toward nourishing my body in a healthy way. And so, I'm using these factor meals for now. This is low carb. I'm choosing low carb. Oh, I thought they said on here what my choices were. Oh, that was on the online. But so I'm watching my carbohydrates because I think carbohydrates really do contribute to my craving. And these do have a little bit of sugar items in there in the small fine print. So this is not something that's going to, I think, work for me in a long-term situation. But for now, short term, where my biggest goal right now is to not binge, to deal with my emotions and let the steam out slowly and slowly as they come and be aware, and to start in the meantime getting to the processing of looking at, things that happened when I was really, really young and kind of set me up for these grooves in my brain. I was listening the other day to Joe Dispenza.
I
Um,
like to, yeah.
yeah, who was it? My sister, a friend, sent me this video, and it was about how you have the same grooves going on in your head that create this really strong highway, but you can start thinking and looking at things a different way and creating these little side roads. And as you create the side roads and use your side roads and create those new grooves in your brain, the highway doesn't really get used and gets old. And so that's what I'm working on, is trying to create, my new little grooved roads and, doing that. And so the other thing I think that I could be more motivated on is meditation and journaling. And I did some more meditation is something I'm really bad at. I sit there and try to think, and all this stuff goes on in my head. But the other day I did a guided meditation on Insight Timer,
Right.
which I really enjoy. And I thought I had set a 15-minute one, but I ended up looking at the clock at like 21 minutes. So I had been doing it for 21 minutes and I was like, gosh, this feels like a long time. And then I looked, it was 21 instead of 15. And so I moved on to some other things that were on my schedule. But, so that's something I think, when you get still and calm and quiet and, you can hear what's going on this inner part. And the other question I had a question for you about, because one of the things that he talked about too was what you focus on is where you spend your time and energy, and what you focus on is where you go. And I'm looking at the higher frequencies like the alpha and the omega, and how, the different things like, enlightenment is your highest frequency of living at. And then you have love and you have peace and you have reason, you have joy. And then down at the bottom, you have your shame and guilt and anger and hurt and all of those things. And so I'm trying not to focus so much on being in the shame and the guilt and the hurt, and living up at the higher frequencies. And I think it's kind of ironic, but in my mind, as I live in those higher frequencies, it allows me to kind of be more aware of where the shame and the guilt and the lower frequencies are, and how to kind of figure out how to get there and navigate through those and heal those.
Well, you're going to next level stuff, but I would love to play if you're willing. So I love Joe's stuff, and I think he's a very valuable member of the human race and moving it forward. And as far as, understanding how we change, really, in a lot of ways, how we get better or optimize the tools that we have, which is our brain and our emotions and literally our brain chemicals and cortisol and all these things. They do studies in, before they take blood, before they start their 3-day event, and then they take it afterwards, and their markers go up, so it's very real. But when you were talking, I was thinking this, you have to think about anchoring. And I think like EMDR and even Joe's work to some level, the big question is, and this is huge, is back to one of the things that I asked when I was doing my little monologue there, is like, is there, the body keeps the score type of the issues are in the tissues. Is there a level of trapped emotions in your body that have to be processed one for one out of your body in order to heal 100%? That's a big, big question, right? And the second question is, and this is interesting twist that I've never really discussed publicly, so bear with me a little bit. I do believe in a Tony Robbins, which was based on neuro-linguistic programming, that the construct of anchoring how you feel in a situation like an Olympian or someone that they keep anchoring the positive so they can recreate the state of how they feel. This is basically Tony's overarching construct, right? And so it is my belief that the ingestion of sugar, okay, the ingestion of sugar and the decimation and this is actually true science, is like your dopamine receptors in your brain and your body in the cannabinoid, these things are down regulated. They're thinned out. You have less of them. They are destroyed by sugar. Okay. This is a proven scientific fact. So the question is, and very similar to what you're talking about with Joe and this work, is that what if you were able to get that abstinence, I mean real true abstinence, and re-anchor everything forward as a positive, okay? Re-anchor everything, and moreover, it's healing these things. They begin to, there's no evidence that the dopamine receptors that you've destroyed regenerate, but there's a lot of evidence that you create new ones. Okay. And so if you're anchoring, and this goes for everything, serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA, there's different, it's different in each one, but, just instead of diving into the science, let's explain the construct that you and I are on here, is that you're anchoring the positive with, because what the sugar has anchored and continues to anchor is the old negative thoughts and feelings and maybe trapped feelings. But let's set trapped feelings aside for a minute. The moving forward, the behavioral change is literally a new slate, a clean slate, okay, that is as healthy as you can get it, from what science says food wise, nutrition wise, right? And then you're working with this clean slate, anchoring all positive stuff, right? And so your meditation, your workouts, everything is anchored to the positive because you are post abstinence, right? And I've seen this phenomena thousands of times now, hundreds, maybe tens of thousands of times, where post abstinence people continue to grow in every aspect of their life, in every section of their life, relationships and careers and parenting, everything gets better, right? Maybe because they're anchoring the positive and letting go of the negative. They're, what you said, they're wiring or closing down that main highway that they used. They've opened a lot of side streets and side highways, and now those are main highways, right? In their brain, all positive, right? In their emotional setup, in their life, they're all emotions, right? And I believe this, it's this, I'm not going to go into the internal cutting thing, but it's similar to this anchor. You're not no longer anchoring the negative. You're letting go of the anchoring. Now, this is setting aside the issue, do you have to process all these bad emotions out? I don't know. Like EMDR doesn't believe, they believe you can do it. Tapping believes you can do it. It's like you're overriding it. Personally, I believe it's a blend, okay? You have to process some of those emotions. You just have to, okay? You can't just be hypnotized or do EMDR or some other thing and override it completely. Do ayahuasca, whatever. You can't do some of these things and override it completely. That's just my personal belief through Dr. Gabor Mate, The Body Keeps the Score, and a lot of other folks, okay? I do believe that there has to be some processing, but that doesn't mean your life's got to suck and do what I did, which is go through a dark night of the soul while you process that crap. You can begin the ascension, Joe Dispenza style, in a re-anchored 100% abstinent body, right? 100% reabs, like you got a clean slate that is every day getting better because every day it's getting better nutrition and better mental functioning, anchoring, physical exercise. Everything is on the upswing. Everything is on the positive, right? You're literally rewiring your brain and emotions, and you're anchoring the positive. Because honest to God, this happened. It happened to me 2 days ago. I thought that I have been 100% carnivore for, I don't know now, like 6 months, 5, 6, 7 months, 100%. And I had an apple, okay? And I just figured, I'll try it, whatever. I didn't really even want it. But I woke up, and this has been gone. I would always wake up like with whatever negative had happened the day before. This was like an anchor. This is how I grew up, to make sure, what's my father going to be? Is he going to be mad today? I would wake up with that feeling of what went wrong yesterday and whatever. And I didn't have that feeling for 6 months, right? It was going away or gone away, but it came right back because this fructose, whatever it is, was in my body.
Interesting.
And so,
Interesting.
yeah, and it's just like, so what I'm saying here is, do you have to process it all? I don't know, but you definitely have to make the break with the abstinence and then begin the ascension.
All right, so I got a question. Like, I'm going to review. I've taken courses on neurolinguistic programming, and I
Yes.
have lots of experience with that. I know about anchoring. I'm going to review my materials, and I'm going to work on that. Because so I can anchor, I can create new anchors to the positive things, right? Like when I'm out walking and the
Yes.
sun is hitting me and I smell some jasmine and I feel really great and positive, I can anchor that moment, right? To like
Yes.
feeling good and joy and good self-care and all of those things. So the question that I have is like, the other day when I was with my girlfriends eating lunch, and one of the girls was talking about the drummer who played these other instruments. And I said, oh, yeah, acoustics. And she goes, well, yeah, percussions. And I had said the wrong word. I meant to say percussions, but I had said acoustics. And so I realized that was the wrong word. And then, I felt really stupid and dumb, and I heard my voice inside my head. And this is what it says. The first thing that it says is, see, here you go again. So it justifies that I'm stupid and dumb. It says, here you go again. And then it says, and then it said, you're so stupid. You're so dumb. You said the wrong word. And so I was talking about this the other day with my therapist. And so then we decided that what I'm going to do during those moments is at that time, just because I remember when it happened, and I just sat back in my chair and I remembered soothing myself. I was like, Cammy, you just said the wrong word. I go, that's very human. I said, don't worry about that. And I was doing some self-soothing talking, and we talked about putting my hand on my heart at that same time to kind of anchor something somatic there and something physical. And then I could look at creating, like I could look at joy and peace and love and some of those higher frequency things at that moment because I was aware. And I could say, look, you're aware of that. Isn't that joyful? Doesn't that give you some peace? And that might help me let off that steam that I need to let off so that I'm not building and building and building. Because
Yes.
when I got done with my trip with those girls and I was eating healthy in front of them, the first thing I did after I dropped off my friend was go to Vaughn's and buy some food that was off plan and proceed to start eating it.
Right.
So, I'm not letting off enough steam.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's your processing is not where it needs to be yet, right? Your ability or your awareness, but more, yeah, both your ability and your awareness are not yet to the point where, I love the phrase, your body will never give you more than it can handle, right? But, you're choosing an old way to process, an old way to numb feelings, as opposed to going out and running 3 miles or walking, like
Yeah,
instead of,
I was always hoping I'd get addicted to exercise, but so far that hasn't happened.
yeah, yeah.
You know how you just switch from one to the other? I did alcohol to sugar, and now I was hoping I'd do sugar to running. I'm
I know a
just
lot of
joking.
exercise addicts, so you don't want to go there, but you do want to have a practice, like you want to have
A
a
10-minute
blended,
walk. I like your 10-minute walks.
yeah, a blended practice of a bunch of stuff. And so yeah, I mean, but I really, I feel like I need to stress this because, and I'll give an example. So we have so many people that come to us with 5, 10, 15, 20, 20 years of talk therapy. And they know intellectually what their inner child stuff is, what their pain is, and they worked really hard for 50 minutes in the therapist's office. And so in their brain, they know what's going on, or what they believe is their problem with the diet, whatever. Except they're not abstinent from sugar. So they're not working with the clean slate. They're stopping at the 7-Eleven on the way home and ruining that whole 50 minutes. You don't get over a divorce and a death and a toxic relationship in 50 minutes. It takes 50 weeks or 50 years sometimes. It takes a long time to finish and heal and get closure, right? And you cannot do that if the slate, if the territory, the environment, the terrain that you're working with just keeps getting flooded with sugar that's numbing those feelings, right? You're not processing normally, that holistically, the way that the factory settings of your body were work, when an animal loses a baby, say a giraffe loses a baby to a lion or something, right? They literally lay on the ground and they just shake all over the place, right? They're just like, and what's happening is they're releasing that grief. They're releasing the pain, the hurt of that, losing that child. And then it's gone. They get up and it's done. But we don't, we don't have that luxury. Like, we have to be stoic, we have to be to work the next day when our mother dies. Can't be that, like, and men, forget about it, but even women, no, they can't show that level. And no one knows how to do it. I mean, they burned witches when they emoted like that back in the day. So it's like it became this stoic kind of, and there's a million ways. The example of my father is, don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about. So from 14 to 33, I never shed a tear. How many years? That's almost 20 years. I never shed a tear. Never felt that deeply about it. It was learned, with drugs, alcohol, sugar. I learned how to stop it. And actually, without it, I learned how to stop. I didn't even need to be used those things. I just had a behavior process that I could stop it. And now we have to revisit this. We have to revisit this ability to and reignite it, how to process what's going on with us, and not just think about it. You can't just think about it. One of the things I like about some of the modern stuff that's coming is, if you think about it, the body leads everything. Yes, the brain is in control of it, but the body leads everything. And that, in our world, the most important thing is behavioral change. It's not knowing. Knowing and not doing is to still not know. Okay. You have to feel it. You have to get the feeling under control, or not under control. You have to get the feeling felt and then see where it goes. Not like, I don't know. I'm rambling, but
No, you're making total sense, because when I eat the sugar, that's to numb. And the reason why I'm numbing is because I'm incapable of feeling the feeling, or I feel the feeling. It starts to come, like I'll feel the feeling and then I feel myself pushing it down.
yes.
Like, because when I was young, it was like, shut up and get in the car. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter that you have these feelings, and there's 7 kids running around, and it was chaotic. And, and not only did you have your mom putting you down, you had siblings that did the same thing. On the other hand, you had siblings that could support and love you when your mom wasn't around either. So
Yeah.
it was very interesting growing up.
Chaos. It's chaos that a small child who discovered this drug that would shut that all down for a minute or two, that was heaven. And it wasn't a conscious thing.
Oh, yeah. And it turns out too that I'm also, well, I don't know what you think about highly sensitive people, HSP, but I think that's what I am. I'm very sensitive. Like and I've noticed that when I feel joy, oh my gosh, it is so, so deep and so wonderful. But then when I feel shame, oh my gosh, it is so deep and so awful.
Yeah, no, I'm a
So,
big fan. I actually am one, I believe. Lane Aronson, a highly sensitive person. I think it's, her work is, there's not a lot of her followers or people who have, there's one woman who has extended her work a little, but Elaine,
what was her name? No, the first person you were talking about.
Elaine Aronson is the writer of the books.
Elaine
Elaine Aronson, yeah.
Aronson.
A highly sensitive
Elaine
person,
Elaine Aronson.
I believe. I think.
Yes, yes. And I think I have people in my family that I think are like that, and people that aren't like that.
And
And
they're sensitive to substances as well. Okay, and
mhm.
feelings and light and noise and sound and whatever.
Well, and then that you get people on the spectrum, right? On
Yeah,
the
it's a spectrum.
autism spectrum that are that way too. Yeah. So anyway, we diverse. But so many interesting things to talk about. The next time I'd like to talk about, if it's okay with you, how we work on abstinence, which is what we're talking about, right? We're talking about doing the right things to keep yourself abstinent. We might want to look at and maybe hopefully the next time we get together, I have some examples between now and then of things that happened where I was able to keep myself abstinent, even though I had those initial, because they're like a reflex. It's like a reflex. It's like, oh my gosh, there's something that happened. Go eat sugar. There's something that happened. Go eat sugar. And it's really hard to stop that sometimes.
Right. Right. Yeah, and like, you're more aware now. For a lot of folks, it's just unconscious. Like, it's not like I need sugar, like I need that beer on a Friday. It's like, I feel like a little chocolate, and so they just go on their merry way. They don't put two and two together. So it's kind of blinded from them. It's obfuscated, or they're just not thinking this way. This is not. They're thinking, I need to go out and exercise more. I need to eat less. It's just not
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are on our way. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you so much, Mike, for all of your love and
Thank you.
support.
Thank you for bringing up the Joe thing and I'm very curious that you knew a little bit about the anchoring and all that because I think it's big stuff, you know. I think it's important. So,
I'm going to implement it, and then we'll check it out in our next session.
okay.
All right, everybody, take good care.